Commander Zixthar stared at the tactical display in front of him. The lights blinked in patterns that should have made sense. They always made sense. He had studied warfare for 70 cycles. He had commanded ships through the Krell Uprising and the Matharian border wars. His species, the Zathians, were known across the galaxy as master strategists. Their brains could process 12 different battle scenarios at once and pick the best option in seconds. None of that helped him now. "Sir, they're docking," his second officer said. Her voice had a tremor in it. Zathians didn't tremble. They calculated. They planned. They won. The human ship attached to their hull with a magnetic clamp that sent vibrations through the floor. Zixthar felt it in his three-toed feet. The sensation made his skin prickle under his uniform. 27 crew members, Zixthar said out loud. He was reminding himself, not informing anyone. "We have 27 trained soldiers, full armor, plasma rifles, defensive positions prepared." "Sir, sensors show only 3 heat signatures on their vessel." 3 humans were boarding a patrol ship with 27 Zathian soldiers. The mathematics didn't work. The tactics didn't work. Nothing about this worked. Zixthar had encountered humans before, but only in diplomatic settings. They were short compared to most species. They had only 2 eyes. Their skin came in different colors, which Zixthar found strange. Most species had uniform coloring. Humans seemed to vary wildly, as if they couldn't decide what they were supposed to look like. But he had heard stories. Every officer in the frontier regions had heard stories. "All units, defensive positions," Zixthar commanded into his comm device. "Remember your training. Aim for center mass. Fire in controlled bursts. Do not panic." The last part was for himself as much as for his crew. The airlock began to cycle. The sound echoed through the corridor. Zixthar watched on the security monitors as the outer door opened. 3 figures stepped through, wearing armor that looked primitive compared to Zathian designs. It had plates and joints, all painted in dark colors with strange symbols on the shoulders. The humans moved down the corridor. They didn't run. They walked with a steady pace that somehow felt worse than if they had charged. One of them carried a rifle that seemed too large for their frame. Another had what looked like a breaching tool. The third had several devices attached to their belt. "Section 3. They're approaching your position," Zixthar warned. Section 3 had 9 soldiers. 9 trained warriors with plasma weapons and energy shields. They were positioned behind defensive barriers in a corridor with perfect sight lines. It was a killing zone. The humans would have to cross 15 meters of open space with nowhere to hide. On the monitor, Zixthar watched the lead human pause at the corner. They made a gesture with their hand. The other 2 moved to positions on either side of the corridor entrance. Then everything happened very fast. The human with the breaching tool threw something around the corner. Zixthar's enhanced vision caught it on the monitor, a small cylinder. It bounced once on the floor. "Grenade!" someone shouted on the comm, but it wasn't explosive. It released a cloud of thick smoke that filled the entire corridor in seconds. The Zathian soldiers opened fire, their plasma bolts lighting up the smoke in bright flashes of blue and green. They were firing blind, hoping to hit something in the cloud. The humans entered the smoke. Zixthar could barely track them on the monitors. Their armor seemed designed to blend with the darkness and smoke. They moved in patterns that his tactical brain recognized as advanced close-quarters combat techniques, but executed with a speed and aggression he had never seen. Sounds came through the comm. Shouts. The thud of impact. A Zathian soldier screaming as something hit him hard enough to crack armor. The plasma fire stopped. The entire engagement lasted 43 seconds. When the smoke cleared, all 9 soldiers in Section 3 were on the ground. Their armor was dented, their weapons were scattered, but they were alive, breathing, conscious but unable to move. The humans had used some kind of neural stunner. "Section 1 and 2 converge on their position," Zixthar ordered. His voice sounded calm. That was training. Inside, his mind was racing through scenarios, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. 14 soldiers moved through the ship's corridors from 2 different directions. They would trap the humans in a pincer movement. It was basic tactics, the kind taught to every military academy student in the galaxy. The humans split up. One went down a maintenance shaft that shouldn't have been large enough for a being wearing armor. Another went up, using a grappling device to climb into the ventilation system. The third one stood in the middle of the corridor and waited. Just waited. "What are they doing?" Zixthar's second officer asked. Section 1 arrived first. They saw the single human standing there, rifle lowered, just watching them. 7 Zathian soldiers aimed their weapons at one human. "Surrender," the section leader commanded. The human raised their hands slowly. Too slowly. It was a distraction. The other 2 humans dropped from above and behind Section 1. They had positioned themselves perfectly, using the ship's own infrastructure. More smoke grenades, more neural stunners, more of that terrifying close combat speed. Section 2 arrived to find their comrades unconscious and the humans already gone, moving deeper into the ship. Zixthar realized with cold certainty that they were heading for the cargo bay. The humans knew the ship's layout. They had planned this. 3 soldiers were systematically disabling a crew of 27, and they were doing it while moving toward a specific objective. "Seal the cargo bay," Zixthar ordered. "All remaining units, fall back to defend the cargo hold. Activate the security bulkheads." Heavy doors slammed shut throughout the ship, dividing it into sections. The cargo bay's entrance was now protected by reinforced barriers that could withstand ship weapons. 8 soldiers formed a defensive line inside the bay itself. They had energy shields overlapping, creating a wall of defensive force. Behind them were the cargo containers, medical supplies, technical equipment, and several crates of processed minerals worth a small fortune. Zixthar watched on the monitors as the humans approached the sealed door. They stopped, examined it. One of them placed a device on the door's control panel. "That won't work," Zixthar's second officer said. "Those doors have isolated systems. No wireless access. Encrypted physical connections. It would take hours to hack." The device beeped. The door opened. 17 seconds. The humans had bypassed security that had taken Zathian engineers months to design. The 3 humans entered the cargo bay. 8 Zathian soldiers opened fire immediately. Energy shields flared as plasma bolts struck them. The humans moved, their teamwork so precise it looked choreographed. One drew fire while the other 2 flanked. They used the cargo containers as cover, always moving, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. A human threw another device, this one attached to a soldier's shield generator, and overloaded it with an electromagnetic pulse. The shield failed. A stunner bolt took the soldier down. Then another. Then another. 5 minutes later, all 8 soldiers were unconscious. The humans began loading specific cargo containers onto portable grav sleds. They knew exactly which containers they wanted. This wasn't random piracy. This was a planned operation. Zixthar sat in his command chair, watching his entire crew get systematically defeated by 3 humans. His tactical mind was finally catching up, analyzing what he was seeing. The humans fought differently than any species he had studied. Most species valued their individual lives highly. They would retreat when injured. They would hesitate when outnumbered. They followed logical patterns of behavior that could be predicted and countered. Humans didn't do any of that. They fought as if the concepts of outnumbered and outgunned were suggestions rather than facts. They fought with a combination of precise planning and wild aggression that his brain couldn't categorize. They used their environment like a weapon. They turned disadvantages into advantages. They moved like predators, because they were predators. Zixthar realized it suddenly. Every species in the galaxy had evolved past their predatory instincts. Every species except humans. They had gone to space, built civilizations, created art and culture and technology, but underneath all of that, they were still hunters. They still had that primitive aggression that most species had evolved away from millions of years ago, and they had combined it with advanced technology and training. The thought terrified him. The humans finished loading their cargo. They moved back toward their ship, moving through corridors filled with unconscious Xathian soldiers. They passed directly below the command deck. Zixthar could have sealed them in, trapped them, flooded the corridor with knockout gas. He did nothing. The humans reached their ship. They detached from the hull. Their vessel moved away, accelerating quickly into the darkness of space. It was faster than it looked. Another deception. Silence filled the command deck. "Sir," his second officer said quietly, "we need to file a report. This was an act of piracy. An attack on a consortium patrol vessel. The Galactic Defense Command needs to be informed immediately." Zixthar looked at her. She was young, only 40 cycles. She hadn't been in the frontier regions long. She didn't know. "What do we tell them?" Zixthar asked. "That 3 humans defeated our entire crew without killing anyone? That they bypassed our security like it was a training simulation? That they took only specific cargo and left? What does that report look like?" "It looks like the truth, sir." "And then what happens?" Zixthar stood up from his command chair. "They investigate. They ask questions. They file official complaints with the human government. They escalate. And then—" He trailed off. His second officer waited for him to continue. Zixthar had heard the stories, whispered in officer clubs, shared in encrypted messages, passed around like warnings. Stories of what happened when you officially reported humans, when you made it a matter of record, when you forced the issue. There was a Krell pirate captain named Threx who had captured a human merchant ship 5 years ago. He had filed a claim for salvage rights, making it official. Within a week, 12 human vessels had appeared in Krell space. Not military ships, merchant vessels, mining ships, even a few pleasure craft. But they all had weapons, and they all had crews that knew how to use them. They had hunted Threx's entire clan, not just his ship, his entire clan, across 3 star systems. They had destroyed 16 pirate vessels, disabled a hidden base, and forced the Krell pirate consortium to hand over Threx himself just to make the humans stop. The humans had left after that. But the message was clear. Touch one human, and all humans become your problem. Then there was the Selenian diplomat who had filed official charges against human mercenaries for violating treaty boundaries. The charges were legitimate. The humans had crossed into protected space without authorization. It should have been a simple diplomatic incident. Instead, the Selenian Defense Network started having technical failures. Nothing provable. Nothing that could be traced back to anyone specific. But their military communications were suddenly being intercepted. Their patrol routes were mysteriously known to smugglers. Their officers were finding their personal information leaked on human information networks. It took 6 months before the Selenians quietly dropped the charges. The technical failures stopped immediately. Zixthar looked at his second officer. "We log this as equipment malfunction and cargo loss. Pirate activity. No species identified. No engagement details." "Sir, that's falsifying an official report. That's against—" "I know what it is," Zixthar interrupted. "And I know what the alternative is. I've heard the stories. I've seen the classified reports. Every species that has officially reported human combatants has regretted it. Not because humans are unbeatable, not because their military is invincible, but because when you make it official, when you put it in records and reports and complaints, you're not just dealing with the humans you fought. You're dealing with all of them." "I don't understand." "Humans have something most species don't," Zixthar explained. "They have this thing called the Internet. It's their information network. When something happens to one group of humans, somehow all the other humans know about it, and some of them care. And some of those who care decide to do something about it. They don't need orders. They don't need official approval. They just act. His second officer's expression showed confusion. Her species didn't think that way. Zathians were logical, organized, hierarchical. You didn't act without authorization. You didn't involve yourself in matters that didn't concern you. You followed the chain of command. Humans apparently didn't do any of that. "What do I tell the crew?" she asked. "Tell them the truth. Tell them we were outmatched. Tell them there's no shame in losing to a superior force. But tell them we're not reporting this. Tell them it's for their own safety and the safety of this entire sector." Zixthar walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. The human ship was long gone, probably already several light years away. They had what they came for. They had executed their mission perfectly, and they had left witnesses alive to tell the story. Maybe that was the point. Maybe humans wanted the stories to spread, wanted the fear to grow, wanted every species in the galaxy to think twice before engaging them. If that was their strategy, it was working. "One more thing," Zixthar said. "Start researching. I want to know everything about humans. Their history, their culture, their military doctrine, everything. Because if we're going to operate in the same space as them, we need to understand them." "Understood, sir." Zixthar continued staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 3 humans were probably laughing about how easy it had been. Or maybe they weren't. Maybe this was just another mission for them. Just another day's work. That thought was somehow worse than all the others. His crew was starting to wake up. The neural stunners had a limited duration. They would be groggy, embarrassed, and angry. They would want revenge. They would want justice. They would want to report this. Zixthar would have to convince them otherwise. He would have to make them understand something that went against every instinct of a military officer. Sometimes the smart move was to do nothing. Sometimes survival meant swallowing your pride and letting an insult go unanswered. He had never thought he would have to learn that lesson. He had always believed that courage and honor and duty were the highest values, that truth and justice were worth any cost. But that was before he met humans, before he understood that some species didn't play by the rules everyone else followed. Some species made their own rules and dared the galaxy to stop them. Commander Zixthar, decorated war hero and master strategist, made his decision. He would bury this incident. He would hide it from official records. He would add his voice to the whisper network that passed warnings between frontier commanders. Because he finally understood what the others had learned. You don't report human combatants. Not if you're smart. Not if you want to survive. You just stay out of their way and hope they don't notice you. 3 weeks had passed since the incident. Zixthar had filed his false report, and the crew had reluctantly agreed to stay silent. But the commander couldn't stop thinking about it. Every night cycle, he reviewed the security footage. He studied the human movements, trying to understand their tactics. The more he watched, the less sense it made according to conventional military theory. He needed answers. Real answers. Not official reports or diplomatic briefings. He needed to talk to others who had faced humans and survived. The frontier station Caxamora sat on the edge of civilized space. It was technically neutral territory, a place where ships from all species could dock for repairs, trade, and information exchange. It was also where people came when they wanted to have conversations that wouldn't appear in official records. Zixthar's ship docked at the station during the night cycle. The station rotated slowly, creating artificial gravity through centrifugal force. The docking bay smelled like fuel and ozone. A mix of species moved through the corridors, Krell with their 4 arms, Metharians with their crystalline skin that reflected light, Vryn traders with their tentacles wrapped around cargo containers, and humans. Zixthar saw several of them walking through the station. They were shorter than most species, but they moved with that same confident stride he had seen on the security footage. They didn't look dangerous. They looked almost ordinary. That was what made them unsettling. He made his way to a bar called The Drift. It was dim inside, lit by bioluminescent panels that gave off a soft blue glow. The tables were designed for multiple species. With adjustable seating and environmental controls, Zixthar found a corner booth and ordered a drink he didn't intend to finish. He had sent messages through encrypted channels asking questions, looking for others who had encountered human combatants. Several had agreed to meet him here, away from official channels, away from records. The first to arrive was a Krell named Vexthor. He was massive even by Krell standards, over 3 meters tall with 4 muscular arms covered in scars. He had been a pirate captain before retiring to run a salvage operation. He slid into the booth across from Zixthar without asking permission. "You're the one asking about humans," Vexthor said. His voice was deep and rumbling. "I am. I was told you had an encounter 5 years ago." Vexthor's expression darkened. All 4 of his eyes narrowed. "I don't talk about that. I need to know what happened. I had my own encounter recently. 3 humans disabled my entire crew." "3?" Vexthor made a sound that might have been a laugh or a growl. "I had one. 1 human mercenary on a merchant ship. We captured the vessel, planned to sell the cargo and ransom the crew standard operation. Did it 100 times before." "What went wrong?" "Everything." Vexthor reached for Zixthar's drink and downed it in one gulp. "The human was a passenger, some kind of security consultant traveling to a mining colony. When we boarded, he fought back, killed 3 of my crew before we subdued him. We put him in restraints, locked him in the cargo hold with the rest of the humans." Zixthar waited. Vexthor seemed to be gathering himself. "We filed a salvage claim, made it official through the pirate consortium. That was the mistake. That was when we put our names in a system that humans could access." "What happened?" "Within a week they came. Not 1 ship, not 2. 12 human vessels. They weren't military, just ordinary humans. Merchants, miners, even a luxury yacht. But they all had weapons. And they all wanted us." Vexthor's hands clenched. "They hunted us. Across 3 systems. They had our routes, our contact information, our hidden bases. They knew everything. It was like they had access to our entire network. They destroyed 16 of our ships. They found our hidden base on the 4th moon of Krextal. They disabled it without boarding, just bombed it from orbit until it was uninhabitable." "How did you survive?" "I didn't. Not in any way that matters." Vexthor stood up. "The consortium handed me over to save themselves. The humans took me, put me on trial in their courts, sentenced me to 20 years in their prison. I served 15 before they released me for good behavior. When I got out, my clan was gone, scattered, destroyed. All because I captured 1 human and made it official." "But you filed legitimate salvage rights. Under galactic law—" "Humans don't care about galactic law when you hurt one of their own," Vexthor interrupted. "They care about revenge, about making examples, about showing everyone in the galaxy what happens when you touch them. You want my advice? You already got it right. Don't report them. Don't make it official. Just stay away from humans and hope they stay away from you." Vexthor left without another word. Zixthar sat alone in the booth, processing what he had heard. 1 human prisoner had triggered a response from 12 ships and destroyed an entire pirate clan. The mathematics of it didn't make sense. The economics didn't make sense. What species would devote that many resources to revenge over 1 individual? The next visitor arrived an hour later. Her name was Silvera, a Selenian diplomat with pale, almost translucent skin and large eyes adapted for low light. She moved gracefully into the booth, her long fingers folding together on the table. "You're investigating human response patterns," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, I understand you had an official incident 3 years ago. Silvera's expression became neutral, the diplomatic mask she wore for difficult conversations. The Selenian government filed formal charges against a human mercenary group for violating treaty boundaries. They had entered protected space without authorization. It was a clear violation of established law. What was the response? Officially, the human government apologized. They recalled the mercenary group. They paid a small fine. Everything was handled through proper diplomatic channels. She paused. Unofficially, everything fell apart. I don't understand. 3 days after we filed charges, our military communication network started having problems. Random failures, intercepted messages, patrol routes that were somehow known to smugglers and pirates. It lasted for 6 months. That could have been coincidence. Technical failures happen. Silvera's laugh was bitter. That's what we told ourselves at first. Then our officers started finding their personal information leaked on human information networks' home addresses, family details, financial records, nothing classified, nothing that broke their laws. But suddenly everything about our military leadership was public knowledge. Zixthar felt his skin prickle. They hacked your systems. We could never prove it. Every investigation came up empty, no traces, no evidence, but the pattern was clear. The moment we dropped the charges, everything stopped. The technical failures ended. The leaks stopped. Our communications returned to normal. So you dropped legitimate charges because of illegal activities you couldn't prove. We dropped charges because continuing them was destroying our military capability. Whatever humans did or didn't do, the result was clear. Fight them officially and suffer unofficially. And they never break their own laws doing it. That's the genius of it. A third figure joined them, a Vryn trader named Kolmar. The Vryn were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. With knowledge passed down through thousands of generations, Kolmar had gray skin that looked like aged leather and eyes that had seen centuries of trade. Forgive the interruption, Kolmar said, his voice wheezing slightly. But I overheard your conversation, and I believe I can offer some context. Please, Zixthar said. Kolmar settled into the booth, his tentacles arranging themselves comfortably. I have been trading in the frontier regions for 230 years. I was here before humans arrived in this sector. I've watched them expand, watched them interact with other species, watched them change the dynamics of frontier space. And what have you learned? That humans are fundamentally different from every other species in the galaxy, not because of their technology, not because of their military capability, but because of how they organize themselves. Silvera leaned forward. Explain. Most species have hierarchy, central authority. When you deal with Zathians, you deal with their military command structure. When you deal with Selenians, you deal with their diplomatic corps. There is a clear chain of command, clear responsibility, clear accountability. Humans have government too, Zixthar said. Yes, but human government only controls humans who choose to be controlled. The vast majority of humans operate independently. They have their own ships, their own businesses, their own motivations, and they have this thing they call the internet. I've heard of it. An information network. It's more than that. It's a collective consciousness without being a hive mind. When something happens to humans anywhere in the galaxy, other humans know about it within hours, and they have opinions about it, and they share those opinions, and they organize based on those opinions. Kolmar pulled out a small data tablet and showed them something. It displayed a human information network page with thousands of messages, all discussing a recent incident where human miners had been attacked by pirates. Look at this. Within 3 days of an attack on human miners, over 50,000 humans had read about it. Thousands posted messages of support. Dozens of human ships changed their routes to patrol that region. Human trade unions organized a boycott of any species dealing with that pirate group. Human hackers found and leaked the pirates' financial records. Human journalists wrote articles exposing the pirates' connections to legitimate businesses. All of this without government coordination? Silvera asked. Without any coordination at all. Just individuals who saw something happen to their people and decided to do something about it. This is what makes humans dangerous. You can't negotiate with them. You can't threaten them. You can't even identify who you're dealing with. When you report human combatants, you're not just dealing with those specific humans or their government. You're potentially dealing with millions of humans who will read about it, get angry about it, and decide to take action. Zixthar's mind was racing. This explained what had happened to Vexthor. It explained the Selenian communication failures. It explained why the Whisper Network existed. So the solution is to never report them, he asked. The solution is to understand the difference, Kolmar said. Humans have a concept called honor culture. They distinguish between legitimate combat and what they consider treachery. If you fight humans in a fair engagement, follow the rules of war, treat prisoners properly, they respect that. They might defeat you, but they respect you. But if you violate their honor code, then you become what they call a valid target, and every human with the capability and motivation can come after you. Not because they're ordered to, not because they're paid to, but because they believe it's the right thing to do. Another figure approached the table. This one was human. Zixthar tensed instinctively, his hand moving toward the weapon he wasn't carrying in the neutral zone. The human smiled. Relax. I'm not here to fight. I'm a traitor. Name's Marcus Webb. He spoke Galactic Standard with a thick accent that Zixthar couldn't place. Mind if I join? I promise I'm not offended by anything you've said. Zixthar looked at the others. They seemed uncertain but not alarmed. Sit. Marcus pulled up a chair. He was middle-aged by human standards, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes. I've been listening from the bar, figured I could answer some of your questions directly. Why would you do that? Because the Whisper Network causes problems. Species avoiding us, not trading with us, treating us like we're all ticking bombs ready to explode. It's bad for business and bad for relations. Marcus ordered a drink from a passing server. So, let me clarify some things. Please do, Silvera said carefully. First, the response you're talking about, the revenge, the coordination, the unofficial action, it's real, but it's not universal. Most humans don't care about every incident. They have their own lives, their own problems. But some incidents trigger a response. Usually when humans perceive injustice or when someone breaks the honor code. What is this honor code? Zixthar asked. It's complicated and it varies by culture, but generally, don't attack civilians, don't torture prisoners, don't use weapons of mass destruction, don't target children, don't betray truces. Follow those rules, and even if we're enemies, we'll respect you. Break those rules, and you become everyone's problem. Vexthor captured a merchant ship, Zixthar said. How did that break the honor code? Marcus's expression hardened. He killed 3 humans and imprisoned others who had surrendered. Then he filed official salvage rights on living people. In human culture, that's close to slavery. That's about as big a violation as it gets. And the Selenian communication failures? Silvera asked quietly. Can't confirm or deny anything about that. But hypothetically, if someone filed official charges that could have led to human military personnel being imprisoned for following orders and defending themselves, some humans with technical skills might have taken that personally. So you admit to illegal activities. I admit that humans are passionate about protecting their own. Sometimes that passion gets expressed through unofficial channels. I'm not saying it's right, I'm saying it's reality. Kolmar spoke up. What would you advise species who encounter human combatants? Marcus thought for a moment. Understand context. If humans are defending themselves or following legitimate military orders, leave it alone. Take your losses, learn from them, move on. We respect that. We might even help you if you approach us correctly. And if humans break your laws? Then report them to us, not to galactic authorities. We have military police, law enforcement, courts. We handle our own criminals. We actually appreciate help catching humans who make us all look bad." The group sat in silence for a while. Zixthar processed everything he had heard. The picture was becoming clearer. Humans weren't mindlessly aggressive. They were protective, organized, and operated by a code that other species didn't fully understand. "There's one more thing you should know," Marcus said. "The internet doesn't forget. When something becomes part of human collective knowledge, it stays there forever. Humans have access to thousands of years of their own history. They remember grudges. They remember betrayals. They remember heroes and villains. If you make an enemy of humans, it doesn't end with one generation. It becomes part of the story that gets passed down." "That's terrifying," Silvera said quietly. "That's humanity." Marcus stood up. "We're not trying to intimidate anyone. We're just trying to survive and thrive like everyone else. But we do it our way, with our culture and our values. Best advice I can give: work with us, not against us. Respect our people, and we'll respect yours." He left some currency on the table for his drink and walked away. Zixthar watched him go, seeing not a warrior but an ordinary trader. Yet that ordinary human had access to the same information networks, the same cultural values, the same potential for collective action as every other human in the galaxy. Multiply one human by billions. Give them instant communication. Give them a culture of loyalty and long memory. Give them technology and motivation. The result was a species that didn't need to be reported because reporting them made everything worse. Zixthar stood up from the booth. He had the information he came for. He understood now. The Whisper Network existed for a reason. Every species that had learned this lesson was trying to pass it on to others. Don't report human combatants. Not unless you're ready to face not just those humans, but the weight of an entire species that considers an attack on one to be an attack on all. He left the station with more questions than answers, but at least now he knew why even the smartest aliens refused to report human combatants. Because intelligence meant recognizing when a fight would cost more than any possible victory was worth. Zixthar couldn't sleep. He had returned to his ship and tried to rest, but his mind kept circling back to everything he had learned at the station. The conversations had given him information, but they had also raised new questions. He needed to understand the full scope of what happened when someone officially reported human combatants. He spent the next several days accessing archived records through unofficial channels. Most official reports about human incidents were classified or sealed, but there were always leaks. Always someone willing to share information if you knew where to look and what to offer in trade. A name kept appearing in these leaked documents: Admiral Quarven of the Metherian Defense Force. 5 years ago, he had been one of the most respected officers in the Metherian military. Then he had encountered human combatants, followed protocol, filed an official report, and everything had fallen apart. Now, according to the records, Quarven lived in exile on a remote colony world. Zixthar changed his ship's course. He had to speak with this admiral. He had to understand what had happened. The colony world was called Velcora, a barely habitable planet with thin atmosphere and constant dust storms. It had a small settlement of various species who had, for one reason or another, chosen to live far from civilized space, the kind of place people went when they wanted to disappear. Zixthar found Quarven living in a small dwelling on the outskirts of the settlement. The former admiral answered the door himself. Metherians were tall and thin, with crystalline skin that normally reflected light in beautiful patterns. Quarven's skin was dull and cracked. His eyes, once bright with intelligence, were tired. "Commander Zixthar of the Zathian Defense Force," Quarven said. It wasn't a question. "I was wondering when someone would come asking questions." "Come in." The interior of the dwelling was sparse. Basic furniture, a few personal items, no decorations, no awards, nothing to indicate that this had once been a highly decorated military officer. "You know why I'm here," Zixthar said. "You had an encounter with humans. You chose not to report it. Now you want to know if you made the right choice." Corvin gestured to a chair. "The answer is yes, you did." "I need to understand what happened to you." Corvin was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked to a cabinet and pulled out a bottle of something that looked like amber liquid. He poured 2 glasses. 5 years ago, I commanded a patrol fleet in the border regions. We encountered a human military unit that had crossed into Metharian-protected space. They were conducting what they called a training exercise, but it was clearly a reconnaissance mission. That's a treaty violation. Exactly. I did everything by the book. I documented the violation with sensor logs, visual records, and communication transcripts. I filed a formal complaint with Galactic Defense Command. I demanded the human government be held accountable. Zixthar sipped the drink. It burned going down. What was the official response? Perfect. Absolutely perfect. The human government apologized immediately. They recalled the unit. They launched an investigation. The officers involved received formal reprimands. Everything was handled through proper diplomatic channels. The humans paid a fine and made assurances it wouldn't happen again. So the system worked. The official system worked. That was the problem. Corvin drank his entire glass in one swallow. I thought it was over. I thought justice had been served. I was a fool. What happened? Corvin refilled his glass. 2 weeks after the official resolution, strange things started happening. Metharian trading companies began having problems with their human contracts. Nothing illegal. The humans simply chose not to renew agreements, chose to do business with other species instead. Within a month, 3 major trading companies had lost significant revenue. Economic pressure. That was just the beginning. Human journalists started investigating Metharian military procurement. They found evidence of corruption, real corruption. Officers taking bribes, contractors overcharging, equipment that didn't meet specifications. The evidence was published on human information networks. Zixthar leaned forward. They exposed real crimes? Yes. That's what made it effective. They didn't make anything up. They didn't need to. They just selectively investigated and reported on problems that already existed. Problems that many governments have, but usually keep quiet. The humans found them and made them public. That destroyed your credibility. Not just mine. The entire Metharian military command structure. Suddenly, we were under investigation by our own government. Officers were being questioned. Budgets were being audited. While this was happening, our actual defense capabilities were being degraded because we were focused on internal problems. Corvin stood and walked to a window, looking out at the dust storms. Then the human labor unions got involved. They organized boycotts of Metharian goods. Millions of human consumers simply stopped buying our exports. Our economy took a significant hit. The human government allowed this? It was legal. Humans have the right to choose what they buy, the right to organize boycotts, the right to publish information. Their government couldn't stop it even if they wanted to, and I don't think they wanted to. Human veterans organizations started funding Metharian opposition groups, political parties that wanted to reduce military spending, activist groups that protested against our border policies. Again, all perfectly legal. They were supporting legitimate political movements within Metharian society. But those movements just happened to align with human interests. Zixthar felt cold, despite the room's temperature. They weaponized democracy. They weaponized everything: culture, economics, information, politics. Every civilian institution they had became a tool to punish us. And they never broke a single law, never fired a shot, never made an official threat. They just used their massive, distributed, highly motivated civilian population as an asymmetric weapon. How long did it last? 2 years. 2 years of watching my career crumble. 2 years of investigations and hearings. 2 years of watching Matherian-human relations deteriorate. Finally, my government asked me to resign. They said it was for the good of relations with humanity. They sacrificed me to make the problem stop. And did they stop? Immediately. The moment I resigned, human trading companies renewed their contracts. The investigations stopped being published. The boycotts ended. The funding for opposition groups dried up. Everything returned to normal as if someone had flipped a switch. Corvin turned from the window. His expression was hollow. They didn't destroy me because I had done something wrong. They destroyed me because I had made it official, because I had forced their government to take action against their own military personnel. And millions of ordinary humans decided that was unacceptable. But the humans violated treaty boundaries. You were right to report it. Being right doesn't matter. What matters is understanding the consequences. What matters is knowing that when you officially report humans, you're not just dealing with their government. You're declaring that certain humans did something wrong, and millions of other humans will see that as an attack on their tribe. Zixthar thought about his own encounter. 3 humans had defeated his entire crew. He had chosen not to report it. At the time, it felt like cowardice. Now, it felt like survival. "Tell me about human culture," Zixthar said. "Why do they respond this way?" Corvin poured himself another drink. "I've spent 5 years studying humans, trying to understand what destroyed my life. The answer is complicated. I have time. Humans evolved as pack hunters, tribal creatures. For most of their history, they lived in small groups that competed with other groups for resources. Survival depended on loyalty to your tribe. Betraying your tribe meant death. Defending your tribe was the highest virtue. Many species have tribal origins. Yes, but most species evolved past it. Most species developed global governance, unified their worlds, moved beyond tribal thinking before going to space. Humans didn't. They went to space while still divided into hundreds of nations and thousands of cultures. They never unified. They never stopped being tribal. Corvin pulled up a holographic display showing human history. "Look at this. Humans have fought wars among themselves for their entire recorded history. Wars over territory, resources, religion, ideology, ethnicity, thousands of conflicts, millions dead. But through all of that, they developed something unique." What? Identity flexibility. A human can simultaneously belong to multiple tribes. They can be loyal to their nation, their profession, their religion, their ethnic group, their local community, and humanity as a whole. These identities overlap and reinforce each other. The holographic display showed complex networks of human social structures. When you attack one human, you're potentially activating multiple tribal identities. The humans who respond might not be from the same nation or culture as the human you attacked, but they identify as human, and that's enough. Zixthar studied the display. So reporting human combatants activates this tribal response. Exactly. And humans have developed technology that amplifies tribal behavior. Their internet allows instant communication across their entire species. A human on one side of the galaxy can read about something happening to humans on the other side and feel personally invested in it. That's irrational. It's human. And it's incredibly effective. They've turned ancient tribal instincts into a modern weapon. They don't need central coordination. They don't need orders from authority. The culture itself is the weapon. Corvin changed the display to show human art, music, and literature. Look at their cultural products. Stories about loyalty, sacrifice, protecting the tribe, remembering the fallen, never leaving anyone behind. These themes appear in every human culture, every human time period. It's embedded in who they are. How do you fight against culture? You don't. That's the lesson. You can fight an army. You can negotiate with a government. You can counter technology, but you can't fight culture. It's invisible, distributed, and self-reinforcing. Every human child grows up absorbing these values. Every human carries them, whether they think about it consciously or not. Zixthar felt overwhelmed. So what do we do? How do we coexist with a species like this? You do what you already did. You avoid making it official. You handle human encounters quietly. You don't activate the tribal response by filing formal complaints. You accept losses, learn from them, and move on. That seems like surrender. It's pragmatism. Think about it from their perspective. Humans see themselves as underdogs in the galaxy. They arrived late to galactic civilization. They're smaller and weaker than many species. They don't have the longest history or the most advanced technology, but they have numbers, determination, and cultural cohesion. And they use those advantages ruthlessly. Wouldn't you? If you were a species surrounded by older, more established civilizations, wouldn't you develop strategies that played to your strengths? Quarvin finished his drink. Humans learned early that they couldn't win through pure military might, so they developed alternatives: economic pressure, information warfare, cultural influence, political manipulation, all perfectly legal, all devastatingly effective. Zixthar stood and walked to the window. Outside, the dust storm was getting worse. It seemed appropriate somehow. Did you ever speak with the humans involved? The ones whose training exercise violated our space? No, but I read about them. The officers received formal reprimands in their official records. Their careers were damaged by my report, and millions of humans saw that and decided to act. Do you regret reporting them? Quarvin was quiet for a long time. I regret not understanding the consequences. I regret thinking that justice and truth were enough. I regret believing that the official system was the only system that mattered. Would you do it differently now? Yes, I would handle it quietly. Ship-to-ship communication, unofficial apology, maybe some kind of compensation that didn't require official records. The violation still gets addressed, but nobody's career gets destroyed and the tribal response doesn't get activated. That seems dishonest. It's survival. Commander, you need to understand something. Every species in the galaxy has adapted to the presence of humans. The Krell pirates now avoid human ships entirely. The Selenian Diplomatic Corps has an entire division dedicated to managing human relations. The Vryn traders have developed protocols for dealing with human sensitivity. So humans are changing how the entire galaxy operates. They're changing how frontier space operates. And they're doing it without conquering anyone, without forced assimilation, without empire building. They're doing it purely through the threat of distributed response. That's power without power, influence without authority. It's brilliant and terrifying. Zixthar turned from the window. Thank you for your time, Admiral. Former Admiral and Commander, be careful. Learn from my mistake. Humans aren't the enemy. They're just different. Dangerously different. If you treat them like any other species, you'll make the same error I did. Zixthar left the dwelling and returned to his ship. The dust storm had gotten worse, making visibility difficult. He had to navigate carefully to reach the landing pad. As his ship lifted off from Velcora, he thought about everything Quarvin had said. About culture as a weapon, about tribal instincts amplified by technology, about the cost of following protocol when protocol didn't account for species that operated outside normal patterns. He pulled up the sensor logs from his encounter with the 3 human combatants, watched the footage again, analyzed their tactics. Now he saw them differently. They weren't just soldiers following orders. They were representatives of an entire species that would respond if those soldiers were officially reported. 3 humans had defeated 27 Zathians. But behind those 3 humans stood billions more, all connected through their information networks, all sharing the same cultural values, all potentially ready to act if they perceived injustice. That was why even the smartest aliens refused to report human combatants, not because humans were invincible, not because their military was unbeatable, but because making it official meant facing not just the humans you fought, but the weight of human culture itself. Zixthar set course for home. He had decisions to make about how his species would handle future human encounters. But for now, he understood why the Whisper Network existed, why officers shared warnings instead of filing reports, why pragmatism had replaced protocol, because sometimes the smartest decision was knowing when not to fight, and fighting human culture was a battle that couldn't be won. 2 months had passed since Zixthar's visit to Velcora. He had returned to his duties, commanding patrols in the frontier regions. His crew never spoke about the incident with the 3 humans. It had been buried, forgotten, erased from official records. Life had returned to normal. Until the day a human military ship entered his sector. Zixthar was on the command deck when the sensors detected it. The ship was larger than the vessel that had attacked them, and it transmitted proper identification codes. It was an official vessel of the Human Colonial Defense Force, not a civilian or mercenary ship. "Incoming communication, sir," his communications officer reported. "Put it through." A human woman appeared on the view screen. She wore a crisp military uniform with insignia that Zixthar's database identified as a colonel's rank. Her hair was tied back tightly, and her expression was professional but serious. "Commander Zixthar, I am Colonel Sarah Chen of the Human Colonial Defense Force Military Police Division. I apologize for entering your patrol sector without prior notification, but I'm conducting an urgent investigation and require your assistance." Zixthar felt his skin prickle. This was exactly the scenario he had been warned about. "What kind of investigation?" "I'm tracking 3 human military personnel who went absent without leave 4 months ago. They've been conducting unauthorized operations in this region. They're deserters, and they're wanted for multiple violations of human military law." The image changed to show 3 faces. Zixthar recognized them immediately. These were the humans who had attacked his ship, the ones he had chosen not to report. "I see," Zixthar said carefully. "What makes you think they're in this sector?" "We've been tracking their movements through various channels. They've hit at least 6 different targets over the past 4 months. Small raids, mostly supply theft. We believe they hit a Zathian patrol vessel approximately 2 months ago." There it was. The moment of decision. Zixthar could deny everything, claim ignorance, maintain the lie, or he could admit the truth and face whatever consequences came from officially reporting human combatants. But Colonel Chen had said something important. These humans were deserters. They were breaking human laws. Did that change things? "May I ask why you're hunting your own people?" Zixthar asked, buying time to think. "Because they're criminals by our standards," Colonel Chen replied. "They were part of a special operations unit that was deactivated 6 months ago due to allegations of excessive force. Rather than accept reassignment, they stole a ship and equipment and went rogue. They've been funding themselves through piracy. And you want my help finding them?" "I want any information you have about their activities in this region. If they did hit your ship, that information would be valuable. I know you didn't file an official report. I've checked, but I need to know what happened." Zixthar looked at his second officer. She was watching the screen with wide eyes. He could see the question in her expression. What do we do? Everything he had learned told him to stay silent. Don't confirm. Don't report. Don't engage. But this was different. This wasn't him attacking humans. This was humans hunting their own criminals. "Colonel Chen, I need to consult with my crew. May I call you back in 1 hour?" "Of course. I'll be in holding position at the edge of your sector." The communication ended. Zixthar called an emergency meeting with his senior officers. They gathered in the briefing room, and he explained the situation. "We can't tell them anything," his security officer said immediately. "We made a decision not to report. Changing that now could activate the response we've been trying to avoid. But these humans are criminals by their own admission, his second officer countered. Maybe the rules are different. Or maybe it's a trap, the security officer argued. Maybe they test us to see if we'll report their people. Then they respond anyway. Zixthar held up a hand for silence. I need to think clearly about this. Let's examine what we know. He pulled up a holographic display showing everything he had learned about human responses to reports. Every case I've investigated involved humans who were following orders or defending themselves, humans who were, by their own cultural standards, doing their duty. That's what triggered the tribal response. These humans are deserters, his second officer said. They abandoned their duty. They became pirates. By human standards, they're traitors. Exactly. The question is whether human culture makes a distinction between reporting humans who are following orders versus reporting humans who are breaking their own laws. His navigation officer spoke up. Sir, there's another consideration. If we refuse to help, and these deserters continue operating in our space, we're allowing the problem to continue. They've already hit us once. They'll hit us again. And if we help the human military police, we're cooperating with humans rather than opposing them, the second officer added. That might establish better relations. The security officer shook his head. Or it sets a precedent. Today it's deserters. Tomorrow it's humans who technically violated some minor regulation. Where's the line? They were all valid points. Zixthar needed more information. I'm going to speak with Colonel Chen directly, face to face. I want to understand her perspective before making a decision. An hour later, a small human shuttle docked with Zixithar's ship. Colonel Chen came aboard with one aide. Both unarmed as required by protocol, Zixithar met them in a conference room. Up close, Chen was shorter than most Zathians, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone used to command. She had scars on her hands and a presence that suggested extensive combat experience. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me, Commander, Chen said, taking a seat. I know this is an uncomfortable situation. That's an understatement. Colonel, I need you to understand something. In the frontier regions, there's an unofficial policy among many species not to report human combatants. You're aware of this? Chen nodded. I am, and I understand why it exists. Then you understand my hesitation. I do, but I need you to understand something as well. The humans you encountered are not representative of our military. They're criminals. They violated human law, human military regulations, and human honor codes. We want them caught as badly as you do. Why should I believe that? Chen leaned forward. Because I'm here. Think about it, Commander. If human culture truly supported these deserters, would I be hunting them? Would I be asking for your help? Would I be putting my career on the line by acknowledging that humans attacked your ship? You could be testing me. I could be, but I'm not. Chen pulled out a datapad and slid it across the table. These are the official charges against the 3 deserters' theft of military property, unauthorized use of military equipment, assault on civilian personnel, piracy, 7 counts of unlawful boarding of vessels. These aren't minor infractions. These are serious crimes. Zixthar examined the document. It was extensive and detailed. If I provide information, what happens? We use it to track them down. We arrest them. They face court-martial. If convicted, they serve time in a military prison, and their victims, including you and your crew, receive restitution. And the informal response? The economic pressure, the information warfare, all the things that happen when you report humans? Chen was quiet for a moment. Commander, let me explain something about human culture that I think you've misunderstood. We don't protect criminals. We don't support humans who betray their own values. The response you're worried about happens when humans perceive injustice, when someone attacks humans who were doing their duty, following orders, defending themselves or others. So there's a distinction. A huge distinction. Report a human soldier for fighting in a war? Yeah, millions of humans might take that personally. Report a human criminal for being a criminal? We'll thank you and help you prosecute them. How do I know which is which? Ask yourself, were the humans following their own laws and values? Were they acting with honor? Were they defending themselves or others? If yes, then reporting them might trigger a response. If no, then reporting them is actually appreciated. Zixthar thought about Vexthor, the Krell pirate. He had captured a human and put them in restraints. That human had been a passenger, not a soldier, not a threat. The human response had been severe. He thought about Admiral Quarven. He had reported humans who were on a military operation but had violated treaty boundaries. The humans had been following orders, doing their jobs. The informal response had destroyed Quarven's career. But these three humans were different. They had abandoned their unit, stolen equipment, become pirates. They weren't following orders. They weren't defending anyone. They were just criminals. You said something about honor codes, Zixthar said. Explain that. Chen nodded. Humans have strong feelings about honor, loyalty, and duty. A soldier who fights bravely, even if they're your enemy, earns respect. A soldier who protects civilians, follows the rules of war, and treats prisoners with dignity, that's honorable. But a soldier who abandons their duty, who uses military training for personal gain, who attacks the innocent, that's dishonorable. That's shameful. And humans respond differently to dishonorable behavior? We respond harshly. These three deserters aren't just breaking our laws. They're betraying everything we teach in our military. They're making all humans look bad. They're giving ammunition to people who think humans are dangerous and untrustworthy. We want them caught because they're damaging human reputation across the galaxy. Zixthar understood. It wasn't about the specific crime. It was about what the crime represented. These humans had violated the tribal code. They had betrayed their own people. That made them outcasts, not brothers to be protected. If I help you, and word gets out that I reported human combatants, will there be consequences? There might be questions, Chen admitted. But I'll make sure everyone knows the context, that you were helping us catch criminals, not attacking innocent humans, that you were cooperating with human authorities, not opposing them. I'll personally vouch for your actions. Your word against millions of humans on the internet. My word plus the word of every military police officer, every judge advocate, every officer who understands the difference between duty and desertion will make sure the truth is known. And the truth is that you helped us maintain order and justice. Zixthar made his decision. The three humans attacked my ship 2 months ago. They disabled my crew with non-lethal weapons and took specific cargo. I have full sensor logs, security footage, and an inventory of what they took. I'll provide everything. Chen's expression showed relief. Thank you, Commander. This information will help us end their activities. Why didn't you kill anyone? Zixthar asked suddenly. Your deserters, I mean. They had the capability. They had us completely defeated. Why non-lethal methods? Because despite being criminals, they're still professional soldiers. They still follow some of the honor code, even if they've abandoned other parts. Killing when unnecessary would be dishonorable. It would make them murderers, not just thieves and deserters. That's a strange distinction. It's a human distinction. We have very clear rules about when killing is acceptable. In war, in self-defense, to protect others. But not for robbery. Not when you've already won. These three crossed many lines, but they haven't crossed that one yet. Yet? The longer they're out here, the more desperate they'll become. Eventually, they might kill someone. That's why we need to catch them now. Over the next hour, Zixthar provided Colonel Chen with everything. The sensor logs showed the approach of the human ship. The security footage showed the tactics they had used. The inventory listed exactly what they had stolen. Chen's aide recorded everything, analyzing the data in real time. "This is excellent," Chen said. "With this information, we can predict their next target. They're stealing supplies, which means they need to resupply regularly. The pattern of their thefts tells us what they're running low on. How long until you catch them?" 48 hours, maybe less. We have ships positioned throughout this sector. Once we narrow down their location, we'll move quickly." Chen stood and offered her hand. Zixthar recognized the human gesture and clasped it carefully. "Thank you, Commander. You've done the right thing." After Chen left, Zixthar returned to the command deck. His second officer approached him. "Sir, we just crossed a line. We reported human combatants." "We reported human criminals," Zixthar corrected. "There's a difference. I'm trusting that Colonel Chen was telling the truth about that difference. And if she wasn't? If we face consequences? Then we face them. But I believe her. She wasn't lying about the distinction between honor and dishonor. It makes sense from what we know about human culture. They value loyalty and duty above almost everything. Humans who betray those values aren't protected by the tribe." 2 days later, they received a message. Colonel Chen had successfully apprehended the 3 deserters. There had been a brief firefight, but no fatalities. The deserters were in custody and would face court-martial. Chen included a personal note. "Thank you again for your assistance. Your cooperation has been noted in official records and shared through appropriate channels. If you face any questions or concerns from human sources, refer them to me directly. I will ensure everyone understands you acted as a friend to humanity by helping us bring criminals to justice." Zixthar shared the message with his crew. They were relieved but also uncertain. They had taken a risk, broken the unspoken rule about reporting humans. Now they would wait to see if there were consequences. Weeks passed. Nothing happened. No mysterious technical failures, no leaked information, no economic pressure. Instead, Zixthar received a message from a human admiral thanking him for his integrity and commitment to justice. The message included an invitation to visit a human military base for a cultural exchange program. Zixthar accepted. He needed to understand humans better, needed to know where the lines were drawn, when reporting was dangerous and when it was appreciated. The frontier regions would continue to have human encounters. Learning to navigate those encounters properly might be one of the most important skills he could develop. As he prepared for the visit, he thought about what he had learned. Reporting human combatants wasn't always dangerous. The key was understanding context, motivation, and honor. Humans who fought for their beliefs, who followed their codes, who did their duty, those were protected by human culture. But humans who betrayed their own values, who became criminals and traitors, those were fair game. The Whisper network was real, but incomplete. The full truth was more nuanced. You could work with humans. You could even report humans if you did it the right way, for the right reasons. The challenge was knowing the difference.